You're listening to Heritage Radio Network. HRN is food radio supported by you. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org.
Hi, listeners. We wanted to let you know that Heritage Radio Network's Julia Child Fellowship application is now open. The fellowship offers an enriching experience for aspiring food writers and journalists who share our passion for food systems change. The fellowship is a great way to progress in the field of food journalism and digital media and will start in early January 2024. This fellowship will provide participants with hands-on experience, mentorship, and access to an extensive network of industry professionals. The application deadline is November 27, 2023. Check out heritageradionetwork.org and click on the Julia Child Foundation Writing Fellowship link to learn more. If you or someone you know has interest in food studies and journalism, this might be a great fit. Go to heritageradionetwork.org and check out the application today. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Peter Reinhardt, and welcome to Pizza Quest. In this week's episode, we've got a special guest, somebody who is probably known to many of you who are in the pizza industry. Those of you who are not in the industry, you may not know our guest, Ed Zimmerman, but you have been influenced by him. And so with that little tease, I'm going to sort of introduce you to our guest, Ed Zimmerman. Thanks for joining us today, Ed. You're coming to us from Northern California, right? Just near the Golden Gate Bridge.
Just over the Golden Gate Bridge. That's right.
Great to see you again. And a couple quick bio notes for all of you. Some of you may know Ed because he was the president of pizza.com, one of the early sort of pizza websites. And I want to hear more about how that all came about. But most recently, and I've known Ed, I think, since the early, probably 25 years now. We met, I think, in person for the first time during the filming of a movie called Pizza the Movie, which we'll talk about also. We got a lot of the times where we crossed over there. There's Pizza the Movie, a movie that probably most of you have not seen, and I don't know if it's even available. But
maybe you shouldn't.
Yeah, right. It's an interesting story. Lots to talk about there. But most recently, Ed is the president also of the Food Connector, which I'll let you explain what that is, Ed. But organized the recent California Milk Advisory Board. What was the pizza contest? What was the actual official name for that?
We call it the Real California Pizza Contest.
Real California, and that's. Most recently, I got a chance to be out there and compete in that contest and got my butt whooped. But Ed and his team were the ones who really put that whole thing together. So Ed, tell us a little bit about, first of all, the Food Connector, because that's your big project. That's what you really do. You're not running the pizza.com site anymore, right?
Right, that's correct. So anyway, Peter, thanks. Appreciate the kind words in the introduction, and always good to see you. I've come to this podcast with nearly 50 years in the food industry, having done really just about everything there is to do: restaurant operations and management, grocery store operations and management, food manufacturing, food distribution. I helped put together Bellissimo Foods, which was a buying group of Italian and pizza ingredient distributors across the United States, still functioning, still a client, and then I started the Food Connector when I left Bellissimo about 23 years ago. And what I had seen throughout my career was lots of small and mid-sized food manufacturers and food distributors who had some sort of differentiated product or service, but they didn't really know how to market it. We're all in the food business, right? The solution to most problems is get up half an hour earlier tomorrow. And at some point, that theory falls apart, somewhere around hour 18.
Yeah.
Working harder is no longer the path to success. And, what I had seen was that companies didn't really know how to use marketing. They certainly didn't know how to use the internet and technology and the power of all of those tools to get their messages out. And, I came to the industry in the days when the sales were all done by taking samples out to restaurants, knocking on doors, asking for the chef, getting thrown out of 90% of the places that that you walked into, and and what we do is, as I said, harness the power of digital, and we work on behalf of about 50 different companies for in food manufacturing, food distribution, and then what we call kind of allied services. So things like the California Milk Advisory Board, that are supporting the industry. And we've got a team of 19. We're across the United States. And this is a dream job for me. When I started, it was just me, and I thought, well, I'll help out some guys I know. And I don't think that I really thought that we would become the company that we are today, but I'm proud that we are. I'm really proud of our team, and we're doing really great work, out there in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, marketing is maybe, unless you're in marketing, it's a very little understood concept. But the one thing I know about marketing is because when I had my bakery and my restaurant, a consultant said to me, "Listen, there's one thing you need to know. Your business is 10% product and 90% marketing. And if you don't get marketing, it doesn't matter how good your product is." And that sort of stuck with me. That was 40 years ago. He said that to me, and I've never forgotten, that piece of advice. And so what is marketing? What is it that you as a marketing advisor do for your clients?
Yeah, I think that, today, again, I grew up in an era where there were 3 television stations, and they serviced the entire United States with, today there are 800 channels, and that still doesn't seem to be enough. That's just on the television, on the broadcast side. But look at all the ways that people get information today. The internet, newspapers, magazines, podcasts, email. I mean, there's such a wide variety of ways that people get information, and people tend to segment how they decide to receive information. It's an old concept at this point, but people choose the level of information that they want to reinforce everything they already believe, and we're not as open and susceptible to new ideas anymore because everything's narrow. I mean, the whole broadcast notion was exactly that. It was to go across a broad audience, and today everything's narrowcast. Everything. I mean, Pizza Quest. Who would have believed 20 years ago that you would have been able to have something called a podcast that would reach people who only cared about pizza?
Right.
So what marketing does is it helps define for a company exactly who their target market is. The expression "trying to be all things to all people at all times," it can't be. I mean, it just simply can't be. And so for most companies that are small, mid-sized, regional, they're only serving some segment of the market. They have to really, really hone in on who are we, what do we do, what's our offer, and what problem do we solve for which group of people. And so that's job one, is defining what the company is, what the services are, what the products are. Job two is then going out and activating that audience. The thing that I said earlier about going out and knocking on doors and getting thrown out of 90% of the places because I was in the wrong place. Companies today can't afford a 90% rejection rate. So what you have to do is figure out, here's 100 restaurants that I'm trying to serve. Who are the 12 that can actually buy from me? And then you hone messages and features and advantages and benefits that will speak to them. You deliver those messages to them so that they get activated, and then you get them to try, part 3, to take an action on that. The call to action, which either means picking up a phone, completing a contact form, filling out a survey, clicking yes, going and placing an order, whatever that thing is. So that's marketing in a nutshell, is defining the company, finding the right customer base, and then getting them to call to action and take an action.
So, obviously you do a lot of work in the pizza sector, but your services extend well beyond the pizza realm, right? You've got clients that have nothing whatsoever to do with pizza, because marketing is marketing. It's the principles.
Well, yes and no. Yes, too. We have lots of clients in things outside of pizza, but yes and no. I would say that we are a product of marketing. That, if you look at the quote ad agency side of the business, which I don't think of us as an ad agency at all. We're marketing services. What we really are is a fractional chief marketing officer. You get that, $150,000 a year senior vice president of marketing with an MBA, but you only get them 8 hours a month because that's really all you need for most small companies. But what the point I was trying to make is we don't try to market ourselves to everyone, not even everyone in the food business. I mean, the narrowing for us is that our market are companies, primarily food service, who are working to sell to restaurants. So whether they're manufacturers selling direct, they're distributors selling direct, they're the California Milk Advisory Board that's trying to influence restaurants directly. I mean, that's the space that we inhabit, and so it's B2B, and the thing about food service marketing or any really B2B marketing is that to me it's chess versus checkers. B2C marketing today, because of the thousands of ways that consumers can get messages, it's all checkers. I mean, every single day you have to have a tweet or a TikTok or a coupon code, and the consumer's fickle. They're very fickle. They say, okay, I only buy Crest toothpaste. They walk into Costco. All they have is Colgate. Buy one, get one. Great, I'm buying Colgate. And that's not the world that we inhabit. The world that we inhabit is one where a food manufacturer is looking for, let's say a frozen pizza manufacturer is looking for a new pepperoni or a new cheese. And so they go out and they scour the universe and they look at all the different types of companies that can serve their needs. They request samples. They do focus groups. They test product, not only hot, but 6 months later after it's been frozen. It's the consumer focus groups. It's a long, arduous, intense process. And at the end of that, they select a company, hopefully the one that we're doing the marketing with. And they're going to typically sign a 3 or 5 year deal because they don't want to go through all of that again. So that, so it's chess. It's a long game. It's about positioning companies as subject matter experts so that when those R&D scientists say, who has the best pepperoni, tomato sauce, cheese, whatever it happens to be, and they start seeing information from us in an article about, different things that we may be trying to get out into the marketplace, that they say, that's the company that we want to talk to when we have an RFP. So long game.
Yeah. So if I'm understanding correctly, the difference between doing business to business as opposed to business to consumer is essentially, and then your company focuses on the business to business or B2B sector, and you're not focused at all on how to when a company approaches you and says, how can I reach the consumers who shop at my local Safeway or Harris Teeter or supermarkets. That's not the thing you focus on. You're focusing on how can I help you connect with the right companies to either provide your ingredients or
distribution services, or a number of things that we might be doing. So it's about building relationships and real relationships. I'm on LinkedIn. I was an early adopter of LinkedIn, and I'm sure this happens to everybody that's listening to this. Somebody sends you a request. Hi, I want to add you to my network. You look at and say, okay, they're in my industry. You click yes, and 5 seconds later, you get the offer. Hey, now that we have this relationship, I want you to sell my. That's not a relationship. That's right. A connection, but it's not a relationship.
That's a hook. Yeah.
So we're in the business of building meaningful relationships that add value. That we're educating the potential buyer long before we put the PO in their face.
How do you do that? How do you build those relationships? What are some of the means by which you make those connections and solidify them?
Well, as one example, as I said, subject matter expert. Who's providing the real information out there? The things that really matter, the things that are true. We used to say, back 1,000 years ago when I was in food manufacturing, we had a big mainframe computer. And, we used to say jokingly, well, if it's on green bar paper, it must be true. For those of you under 30, you'll have to Google green bar paper. But if the computer spit it out on green bar paper, it must be true. And that's the internet. Well, I saw it on Yelp. That must be true.
Yeah.
And so we all know that may not be true, and misinformation, disinformation, call it whatever you will. We're in the business of being the truth tellers, of telling sometimes the uncomfortable truth, but this is what's real. These are the real issues that you're going to face in making whatever the decision is. Whether it's product or service or directional or that type of thing. So I think that's a thing that we do. I think that for us, value added is, then I would say the name Food Connector wasn't an accident. I'm one of these people that's naturally curious about people. I ask a lot of questions. I have kind of a photographic memory, and I'll remember somebody that I met at a food show 28 years ago, and someone will say, do you know anybody who, what? Yeah, hold on. I'll grab my phone. Here, call this guy.
Yeah.
And I'll send an email and connect them. And, so I think that value added for us is doing that. We're not brokers. We don't go out and sell for our clients, on a commission basis. But if we know people that can use their product or service, we make the connection. And, my wife always says to me, you're never going to retire. And I said, why would I retire? I go to my office, I talk to my friends, I get them to do business with each other.
That's right. It's like people who are negotiators. They never stop negotiating even after they retire because they love negotiating. So I'm trying to think of what Malcolm Gladwell divided the world into like connectors and
transactors, I'd say.
Yeah, and an expert. Basically. I forget the term he used, but it was people who were the experts who knew whose validity was based on that they knew more about that subject than anyone else, versus the connectors whose ability was to put the right people together with each other. And I think that's clearly what you do in your business is helping people make the right connections, and maybe what they're paying you for is to shorten that journey for them to get from point A to point B.
I think that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So let's get specific and talk about it in terms of, where you and I always intersect, which is at the pizza conferences and at the expos and things like that, because that's clearly a place where you're there both representing some of your clients, but also, I'm guessing, also looking for any other operators who could use your services. So you must be prospecting at some of those as well. But the client that I'm most familiar with that you have is the California Milk Advisory Board. So what is it that you do for them? Because they clearly have a B2B division, and then they also must have a huge division that focuses on business directly to consumer, because they represent every milk product that comes out of California, whether it's cheese or sour cream or just milk. So what do you do to enhance, and what makes it worth it for them to hire you to do what they can't themselves?
Well, yeah, you're right. And California is the largest dairy state in the United States by far. And that when I got involved with them nearly 20 years ago, I would say that most people in the country, certainly people in the pizza industry, did not know that. They knew about Wisconsin, New York, some of the eastern, states, which all have, wonderful dairy industries. California is by far the largest. And, specific to pizza, there's more mozzarella cheese being produced in California than any place else in the country, but also Hispanic cheeses, also butter, also non-fat dry milk, and, a number of other products. So what we do is we looked at what's unique about California. And obviously what stood up, fast and furious was mozzarella. And so we started building a program that would get first the word out, that brand awareness, that this is where mozzarella comes from. And that, as I said, was very unknown. And, particularly to if you look at the mozzarella business in the United States, there are certainly some wonderful brands and very well known across the United States or regionally. But a lot of the mozzarella that's sold to pizzerias, particularly to independent pizzerias, are distributor private label. And so how did the distributors know where to go and
Yeah.
try to find a partner? Exactly the type of thing I was thinking about. How are we going to do testing? How are we going to do supply chain advancements and all of those things. I mean, and so a lot of it in the early stages was about getting distributors and the buying people at the national and regional distributor level to see that California was where mozzarella came from. And so we helped support all of those programs and launches and that type of thing. In the early years, we partnered with a national distributor who put California mozzarella in 42 states. And that was a big accomplishment, 20 years ago. Today, more of our work is really with the operator, the pizzaiolos, and others that are looking for those types of products. And what I always say about California products is that mozzarella, cheddar, butter, I mean, they all have what's called a standard of identity. So they're all pretty similar by federal decree. They must hit these sorts of things. So there's only so much from a chemical point of view that you can do and still call a product butter or cheddar or whatever it happens to be. So it comes down to performance characteristics. And I say for food service, it comes down to consistency. McDonald's is the most successful restaurant chain in the world, not because necessarily of quality, but because of consistency. Mm-hmm. Every single day that you go to a McDonald's, the hamburgers taste the same. Yeah. The French fries are the same. No one says, I love the McDonald's on Main Street, but the one on 4th, I don't like. They're all the same. And so the consumer is going to choose the level of quality, and McDonald's is going to satisfy that 100% of the time. So if you look at consistency in pizza, our center of the plate, if you will, is the cheese. And mm-hmm. what's different about California is our weather. I mean, cows are eating the same feed 4 seasons out of the year. In places in the upper Midwest or, in the Northeast where, they may be on pasture 3 or 4 months out of the year, but 6 months out of the year, pasture is covered in snow. So feed is brought in. And I'm not saying that's good, bad, it's not the same. And right. So the milk flavor, particularly for mozzarella, because it's such a short shelf life, fresh tasting product, that's what you're buying. Is going to be heavily influenced by the feed. And so if you feed the animal the same feed 4 seasons out of the year, and you like the flavor profile and the performance characteristics, those things are going to be the same throughout the year.
That's interesting because you answered one of the questions I was about to ask you, because I was going to ask you to put on your maven hat. That was the other term I was looking for. Is there's the connectors and there's mavens, and you're both. And I think that's part what makes you so successful. What you do is you're a really good connector by nature, but also in this area, in the area specifically in the pizza categories of cheeses, you're a maven. You can speak with authority about the product itself.
That's right.
So one of the things that as somebody who loves cheese and of all types and has been to Wisconsin and Vermont and some of the other great cheese meccas, is that they each have a cachet and an identity. And you were talking it sounds like one of the factors you've identified for what differentiates and distinguishes California cheeses is that the consistency of the feed and of the product. What are some of the other characteristics of the California? So I'm asking you to be the maven here and not just the connector about the California cheese products, dairy products in general, that really, from a branding standpoint, makes the term California milk, California cheese, different from Wisconsin and Vermont and New York.
I would say there's the general answer is that in general, our dairy farms are larger than they are in other parts of the country. Now, why does that matter? I'd say there's 2 reasons. One is if you look at milk receiving. So if you have 80 cows, in your dairy, the milk truck comes and it picks up, that's, a quarter of a truck. So then that truck is going to go to the next dairy and the next dairy and the next dairy. And it may be a day or a day and a half until that milk gets to the processing facility, whether they're making cheese or sour cream or whatever it happens to be. By law, federally, that's okay. There's no issue with that. But California, because we have larger dairies, the truck goes to the farm, it fills up, it goes to the processing plant, and that milk, by the time it goes through processing, is oftentimes 3, 4, 5, 6 hours old. That's it. And again, looking at a product like mozzarella or butter, where that fresh dairy note is so important, you're going to get more of that in a place like California than you are in a place that has smaller average herd size. So that's one thing. The second thing about size, scale, is the ability to have veterinary science that's on staff, that's really looking at animal health, at feed, at nutrition, at yields, at all of those things that not only are going to keep the cow more productive, but healthier. And there's a notion in dairy farming that's called cow comfort, and that's really important. I hear dairy farmers mistreat their cows. It's simply just a fable. It's not true. And what I always say is so that's the worker on the dairy. So if you're running some other type of factory, auto parts, or you're making soup or whatever it is, does the owner or manager say, the way for me to get the most production here is to mistreat my employees, because that's how they're going to be most productive? Yeah, it's the same one at dairy. So it's the notion that they'd be motivated to mistreat the animal is just false on its premise.
Well, we're very suspicious of large businesses too, by nature, and media's sort of played into that too.
That's right. Listen, there's bad dairy farmers, there's bad doctors, there's bad police, there's bad grocers, but that isn't most.
Yeah,
right. Most people are doing the right thing for the right reasons, and yes, if you want to go out with a camera and find a dairy farmer, a policeman, a grocer who's not doing the right thing, and then make a media splash about it because that's what sells in America, you can find that. But that isn't suggestive or representative of the industry.
Is that part of the work of the Milk Advisory Board too, is to help to keep the standards really high and to not necessarily police them, but at least go around and correct anything that they see that could taint the pool?
Yeah, the correction part is not part of the Milk Board's role. Certainly, standards are upheld by other organizations. So it's not really the role of the Milk Board, to do that. Their role is increased demand for California dairy products. But there's a third significant reason for scale, and that's sustainability. Where there is some notion of issue on dairy farms, it can be around methane gas and sustainability and good stewards of the land and that type of thing. Every piece of agriculture has an impact on the land, whether you're growing almonds or raising cattle or growing corn. All of it has an impact on the land. That is a statement of fact. So I think that California, because the dairy farms are larger, have the ability to do research on sustainability and then be able to do something about it. Things like methane digesters. I mean, you saw one, I think, when you were out last time. Collecting the manure, and then tenting it and turning that those gases into electricity that then powers the farm. And for a lot of these larger dairy farms, 300 houses around them is a great benefit to the environment, to sustainability, and those type of things. But you really have to have a large enough farm. If you have that 80 cow dairy, it's just not enough scale, to overcome the initial investment, to do something like a methane digester. But there are other things. There's other things that the Milk Board does educationally. about sustainability, water use and that type of thing, where we do a lot of research around those issues and then share that research with our dairy farmers.
Oh, that's good. One thing that I think of when I think California cheese, because I lived in California for a long time, a long part of my life, and I love California products in general, but certainly California cheeses, is the sheer variety of cheeses, the numbers of types of cheeses. It's like any cheese you can think of that was made famous in some other part of the world is also being made in California. Whether on a small scale or large scale. I mean, nothing as big as mozzarella, but you can find pretty much every type of cheese, in California.
Shakespeare said there's nothing new under the sun, right? So,
right. And California is kind of like it's an amalgamation of, of the best of everything you can find in the best of the world can be done in California because of the conditions, because of the land, the proximity to the ocean.
And I would also say because of the population, dairy products, by their nature, traditionally have all been about local consumption. And, with 40 plus million people, here within a couple hours drive, there's demand, right? So, I'm an economist by training. I always have to apologize to others about that. But, there's the demand side of the equation. So the supply is naturally going to rise, and it's naturally going to rise in an area, because of perishability and and those type of things that is nearby. So that's driven a lot of the variability, of California dairy products.
Yeah, well, it's cool that you've got. First of all, it's great for you that you've got a client as large as California Milk, the CMAB. Before we run out of time, let's talk a little bit about the contest that you came up with for the board that they've been running for the last 5 years. The Real California Pizza Contest.
Sure. Well, so if you wanted to find out information about the milk board, the domain is realcaliforniamilk.com. So this notion of real has been part of the marketing of California dairy products for many, many, many years. And
does that go back to those commercials that I remember seeing of the real California cows or something like that?
Yeah. So it's that milk's a real product.
Yeah.
It has real nutrition. It has real attributes. That are good and healthy for a good and stable diet. So of course, we wanted to play on the word real. And when we saw that, of course, California was number one in mozzarella, we said, well, what if we had a pizza contest? And so the natural name for it, of course, was the Real California Pizza Contest. And we held the first one 5 years ago. And we break them. So we have, let's say, 3 categories. And what we ask pizza chefs to do is submit recipes in one of 3 categories.
Mm-hmm.
We've tweaked those categories over the years to try to have it be the best contest and the thing that's most interesting for for everyone else. And so this year the 3 categories were Cal-Mex, which was another invention that that we looked at. Everyone knows what Tex-Mex is.
Yeah.
But, 5 years ago, we said, well, California Mexican food is different. It's lighter. It makes better use of vegetables and, the other things that are known, in California. So, so a meat lover's pizza, though delicious, wouldn't be a Cal-Mex pizza.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right.
Because we're number one in the production of Hispanic cheeses, how do we take these authentic cheeses that come from our southern neighbor that we share so much with, not only a border, but lots of people that go back and forth and influences and that type of thing. How do we take these great Hispanic cheeses and pair those with other products from California? So that was Cal-Mex. We do a Real Californian, and then also a plant forward. Similar idea.
The Real Californian was the category I entered in.
Yeah.
Because there's something that said, I'm guessing that the way I would say, if someone said, why did you do that category? I said, well, the whole idea is to celebrate what do you think of when you think of California? Whether it's fresh, whether it's you know uh, vibrant flavors, or something, because there is something called California cuisine where
That's right.
maybe 30 years ago influenced the whole rest of the country, and it was all about fresh farm to
Yeah.
table,
Yeah. And if you want to drive this back to pizza, California Pizza Kitchen, which obviously was born here, they had this notion first that it wasn't going to just be, the meat lovers pizza, but that they were going to really look at the fresh vegetables and that type of thing. And, the invention that they brought to the market was barbecue chicken pizza.
That's right.
The idea of not tomato sauce, traditional, but a barbecue sauce, and then pairing that with chicken, with red onions, with cilantro.
Right.
I mean, I remember the first time I it was like barbecue chicken. It's like, what's obviously delicious, obviously has caught the attention of lots of pizza chefs and, more importantly, consumers. And you'll find barbecue chicken pizza across the country. But yeah, it was a California invention.
Yeah, and it kind of blew the lid on what pizza could be. That pizza is not just an Italian product. It's not just sauce and cheese. It's dough with something on it, and that something on it could be international. It could be, inventive. It could be anything you want it to be.
That's right. Pizza's a platform, and
Exactly.
and it's not unique. And there are other quote flatbread type products throughout the world. Naan would be another example, or Ethiopian cuisine. They have these injera bread where you use so it's a universal type of thing, to have a some sort of platform, and so I think that what California Pizza Kitchen, and I would say California in general, brought to the pizza world was the notion that pizza doesn't just have to be plain or pepperoni, that you could be inventive, bring the chef part of pizza chef. And certainly that's what you did, with using fresh figs, on yours, and and pairing bacon and figs. I mean, that's it's fantastic.
Well, what I loved about having sort of access to this, you sent out a list of all the different cheeses that could be available to those of us who are entered. And I think, and backing up just for a second, this contest was available only to professionals. It wasn't a home cook.
That's
you had
correct.
to be either in the industry or in education. So I qualify. I'm a consultant to the industry, so I qualified there. But also, I'm an educator, and I've got students, and so culinary students could also enter theoretically. But most of the people who entered are professional pizza operators. I was up against, when I got there, and I realized I'm up against 11 other finalists, all of whom are pizza professionals who do it every single day.
That's right.
And so I felt like I was in the deep end right from the start.
Well, I think though that the feedback that we've gotten from participants over the 5 years is that what's different about this contest is that at its core, what we tried to do most was build camaraderie. Lots of contests are, it's a blood fest, right? Who can climb to the top of the mountain while killing, everyone around them. And that's not what we wanted to do. We wanted to build camaraderie and, and the notion of working together and, and that type of thing. Also, I'd say a California concept. And, and what comes out of it is a recipe book. Yeah. And you can get that recipe book on realcaliforniamilk.com/food service. And we've had several thousand people download the recipe book. And the thing about cooking, and I have a baking background. I was in the wholesale bakery business for 15 years.
Yeah.
Cooking is art, baking is science. So the underneath the dough is the science.
Yeah.
But on top is the art. And so to me, if I was a pizza chef, I would want to see that book, not because I want to know, does it get 1/4 cup of this or 3/8, but what were the flavors that were mixed? Yeah. And then I want to do my own version. But like with yours, figs and bacon. Wow, boy, everybody loves, that as a combination. Right. So how do you, I'm going to have my own version of that. I don't necessarily need Peter's version of that.
Well, in fact, you mentioned earlier about the barbecue chicken. Well, the winner this year, the grand prize winner this year, Bill Crawford, came up with a beautiful pizza, and his was a chicken themed pizza. It was and it was he was in the Cal-Mex category, if I'm not mistaken, because he marinated his chicken in tequila. That was his secret trick that he did, and I thought that was pretty ingenious, and his pizza was delicious. It looked like the presentation was beautiful, and it looked almost like what you could imagine a taco if it were a pizza, because it had the sliced lime wedges on the for garnishing and everything else. But it had this wonderful chicken, and then of course its use of 3 or 4 different California cheeses to finish it off. But I thought that was a good example of inventive.
Well, and I want to bring that back to marketing. So, if you, the intention of this is not to have some, coffee table, pizza. It's like, this is a pizza you should put on your menu and sell. Now, and here's the why behind that. If you're selling pepperoni pizza, right, commodity, every national chain has got a coupon on pepperoni pizza, so it's a race to the bottom. What's the cheapest that I can get pepperoni pizza for with my $2 coupon? The whole idea of everything in the restaurant business is, how do you get consumers to come, love you, tell their friends, and buy items on the menu that generate more gross profit than average? So here's the marketing part of that. So you've got this tequila marinated chicken. Imagine the description that you could have on the menu, tonight's special, drunken,
drunken
chicken.
It was a drunken chicken. That was the trick. Yeah. He wrote it in Spanish, but it was translated drunken chicken pizza. Yeah.
Right. So then the consumer goes, boy, I'll bet that's fantastic. We'll have one of those. Not how much is it? We'll have one of those.
There you go. Yeah.
And so, if you look at the theory of menu engineering, which is the idea of driving the consumer to buy a product on the menu that is a higher gross profit, that's the winner. So instead of it being a $7 gross profit item, it's an $11 gross profit item. If you could get $4 extra out of every single meal that you serve in your restaurant, that's the key to success.
The win right there. Well, you've been doing this for 5 years, which means that 5 times 3, you've have at least 15 winners, category winners over these 5 years, and that gives you enough critical mass to do something. Talk a little bit about what you're going to be doing this fall to celebrate that fact.
Well, we actually haven't announced this, publicly, because we wanted to keep it, sort of under wraps. So I'm gonna.
Well, this won't go out live for another month or so. So hopefully,
then we should be great. We're going to bring back the winners, all of the winners that we've had, and have a tournament of champions. And we're gonna allow them to. We're going to have them do 2 pizzas, one individually, one in a team. And the idea of the tournament of champions is, these are the best of the people that we've had a chance to work with in the past. But it's really building on a camaraderie idea that so many of these pizza chefs have met there, stayed in touch over the years. They formed their own little community, and they call each other, "Hey, what do you do when?" And so we want to bring them back and let them celebrate each other. And there will be a grand prize that I'm going to keep secret, because they don't even know what it is yet. And
they would do it without a prize, but it's nice that it's also a prize.
I honestly think they would pay us to come.
Right.
We'll have the results of that upcoming, and it should be.
And that's coming up soon. But in addition, the annual contest usually takes place sometime in the summer. Do you foresee that there will be another contest for people who are listening and they want to go, how can I enter? Will there be one in 2024?
There absolutely will be. And we typically do the kickoff around the time of the Pizza Expo.
Okay, so like March-ish or so.
Yeah, and the process is, you go online to Real California Milk /Food Service, and there's a registration form, and you have to fill out information about yourself. Again, your point that you have to be a professional chef, and yes, we vet that. We look, is there a Mikey's Pizza on 4th and Main? We actually look to make sure that's
because you get a lot of entries, and then the judges have to sift through all the hundreds of entries that come in to pick the 12 finalists that you bring to
That's right.
California.
Yeah, and that's not an easy process. So we ask people to go put in their recipe, upload some photos so that our judge community can take a look at it. And so of course that naturally says, well, who are the judges anyway? Our two mainstay judges are Tony Gimignani, who I assume most of your
World champion, for those who don't know, the few people left who don't know, and also
and then,
Glenn, right?
Yeah, and then Glenn Sobolski, also a very well-known pizza executive chef and an educator. And then our third judge every year is the grand prize winner from the year before.
The year before, yeah,
and,
which is nice.
And which does two things. It celebrates them and it keeps them the heck out of the contest.
Yeah, right. You what you don't want is one person who can win 4 years.
Yeah, we're not trying to build a sports dynasty here, right?
You bring him back for the Tournament of Champions or her. So it was really fun. And you're right about the community. One of the things that I experienced when I was there is, how the camaraderie was great. Everybody's helping each other out. Everyone wanted to win, but at the same time, we were all colleagues. And at night, groups of them would get together and go, like, let's go down to San Francisco to the latest new pizzeria that we just heard about, and we're all on a pizza hunt and a pizza quest ourselves. Right. So right. I thought that was really, just a wonderful thing, and it was a 2 wonderful days of pizza love, culminating in great championships. So we're just about at the end of our allotted time. So before we completely close it, we mentioned earlier at the very beginning that there is this movie that came out 20 years ago called Pizza the Movie, and just can you give everyone sort of a little capsule of what that movie was about and why we laugh every time we say the name Pizza the Movie?
Yeah, the fellow who did it, he wanted to do a documentary, and he was a guy who did documentary films, and noticed that there was not a documentary about pizza. There was Mystic Pizza. There was some other at that
time. Now, ever since then, there's been dozens of them. Right. But back then, there was none. Yeah.
And his idea was really to go around the country and celebrate pizza. Where did this notion come from? And you might want to have me back for another version. I love the history of pizza in the United States. Yeah. And I have a lot to say about it. I'm one of the very few people that you'll meet who's been in all 50 states. And I guess I've probably had pizza in certainly most of them. I don't know all 50, but pizza is where you grow up. It's what you grow up with, and pizza has evolved and devolved over this country in so many different ways. But anyway, this person wanted to go and find out the history of pizza. How did it happen in New York or South Carolina or whatever? And he was directed, I think, mostly by the 2 publications, Pizza Today and Pizza Marketing Quarterly. Who are the big influencers in the pizza industry? That's how they found you. That's how they found me. Yeah. And they went around and did interviews, and it was pretty marvelous. It was the audience was for consumers who love pizza and didn't know exactly how it got there. I mean, there's as I always lovingly say, Mikey's on Main, around the corner that I get my pizza from. Yeah. But why? Why is Mikey's there? And why does Mikey have what Mikey has? And so I thought they did a pretty good job. They
had some nice footage of places like Frank Pepe's in Connecticut and in New Haven, and went to some historic places, and so they came to North Carolina. I'm in the segment. You're a big part of the film, and then we all met. It kind of all came together. The final shoot, I think, was in New York City at a big pizza expo at Javits. And I'm not going to say too much about that because go get the movie. We're not going to give the ending away, but it's got a very bombastic conclusion, unexpected. The filmmakers were not sure how we're going to bring this all together, and something happened at the New York Expo that kind of like tied the whole film together.
There's your cliffhanger. Stream the movie and buy popcorn.
There you go. Yeah, and hang on for the ride. It's going to be a bumpy ride. So Ed, thank you so much. We definitely do want to have you come back. We'll do a whole other episode sometime in the future where we just talk about this whole history of pizza, and you can share your travels and your own quest.
I've been involved in three of the major transitions of pizza, distribution, California cheese, which we talked a lot about today, and technology with pizza.com. And
Yeah.
I didn't set out to change the pizza world as a notion, but I think in a lot of ways I influenced it from a lot of different
The
places.
pizza world changed on your watch, and you were a big mover and shaker in making that happen. So thank you for all of that you've done, and it's great after all these years. When we first met years and years ago, who knew where it was going to go, and here we are 20 years later, and we've had a chance to be kind of part of this ride, which has been very enjoyable and has led to other interesting, convergences, like getting to come out to Napa and compete in the real California pizza contest. So
Pizza is love.
there
So,
you go. That's it.
That's it. That's it for all of us.
Bottom line, great place to end today's episode. Ed Zimmerman, thanks so much.
Thank you, Peter.
And folks, join us on the next episode of Pizza Quest, where we'll continue this never-ending search for the perfect pizza and all things that drive us. Somebody like Ed, who's been in the industry, would you say 40 years now? What keeps you going? And I think you said the bottom line is one word: love.
Love. Pizza is love.
I will look forward to seeing you at the next Pizza Expo, if not sooner. And Ed, thanks so much for being with us. Thank you all for joining us today. See you next time.
Pizza Quest is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.